There is no error with your audio outputs. Do not attempt to fix any sound issues. We are monitoring you with this device. We control your options and settings. We are transmitting through your internet connection, but our signal is actually entering your mind, sending electrical impulses into the very tissues of your brain. Try to stay calm. We've taken over your senses for the duration of this broadcast. You are helpless to resist. We have taken control for your own sake. There are things you must know. This is Paranoia Radio, hosted by Olaf Phillips and Ron Patton.
Well, welcome to another thrilling podcast of the Paranoia Podcast. I am Olaf Phillips. I have on the line Ron Patton, my editor-in-chief, and we have a special guest tonight, Jay Dyer, and we're going to be talking to him in just a bit. First of all, sorry everybody, we took a little hiatus to get some shit done. We've been working hard on putting out some books I think you find fascinating. ParanoiaPublishing.com, check it out. And we're in the process of laying out our new issue. We actually, yes, it's been a year, but we have a new issue. I know nobody thought it would happen, but it has happened. There's some good stuff in there, and I'm looking forward to it. It's a real cornucopia of odd stuff, and I think that it's going to have a new, nice, cleaner look. Maybe a little kitschy, but it's going to be fun. So look for that in the
It's well worth the wait. Well worth the wait.
Yes, very well worth the wait. So with all that said, big apology from me and Ron. We try to get this done on a more regular basis, but we're kind of irregular people, so it comes out irregularly. And I do apologize.
Speak for yourself, Olaf. Speak for yourself.
Shut up, Ron. So I think that it, we're going to try really hard to get this out on a more scheduled basis, but we're working on it. But we're a small operation, and we're just trying to get stuff done. Okay, so Jay Dyer, Ron, you got the bio. Go.
Hey, well, Jay Dyer's jaysanalysis.com has grown to become one of the premier film and philosophy sites on the internet, showcasing the talents of Jay Dyer. His graduate work focused on the interplay of film, geopolitics, espionage, and psychological warfare. Jay is a public speaker, lecturer, comedian, author of the popular title Esoteric Hollywood, Sex, Cults, and Symbols in Film, as well as the host of the Jay's Analysis Podcast, Esoteric Hollywood. Jay is also a regular contributor to 21st Century Wire, Soul of the East, and the Espionage History Archive, broaching subjects as wide as satire, metaphysics, film analysis, theology, geopolitics, literature, and history, as well as interviewing numerous prominent figures. Jay has authored hundreds of articles already read by millions in just the past few years. Jay Dyer, welcome to the Paranoia Podcast.
Thanks, dudes. Glad to be here.
I never knew you were a comedian, though. That's news to me.
Yeah, actually, I did do stand-up quite a few times when I was in my early 20s, and then I've done several pretty kind of relatively popular YouTube videos that are pretty comedic, I would say. They've got pretty good numbers.
So tell me, I guess it's somewhat conspiratorial, but I've always heard the stories of the secret book that every comic has.
Well, I don't know that I don't know if I count as a comedian. I do a lot of impersonations, and I do characters and do videos, and then so I've not been paid for ever doing comedy. So
that's okay. Some of the funniest people aren't.
Cool.
Well, I guess it's debatable. There's probably a lot of people don't think I'm funny, so I don't know.
I think you're hysterical, just so you know that.
Well, you didn't even know I was a comedian, so I don't believe that.
No, but I had a great conversation with you while you were drinking margaritas. I thought
I forgot about that.
Yeah. I thought you were
over burritos.
Over burritos.
Burritos and margaritas.
Burritos and margaritas.
Where was this?
Hella funny.
Now, where was this? Where was this?
It was at the Secret Space Conference.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
I think at the time we were talking, I think that Jay didn't even realize I was one of the speakers. Like, no,
I didn't.
No, it was really weird. Like, I left to go outside, and I come back in, and the lady at the door is like, "You don't have a pass." I'm like, "Well, of course I don't have a pass." And she's like, "Well, you need a pass to come in." I'm like, "Well, I'm going to speak in like 15 minutes. If you don't let me in, I'm not going to be able to fucking speak."
They did that. She did that to me too. I was hosting the fucking thing, and she did that to me.
Yeah.
She's like, "You can't come in here," and I'm like, "I've been hosting this since like 8 a.m. Did you not see me on the stage like 10 times in a row?"
You did a good job, though. It was kind of dropped on you. You did a really good job, just for what it's worth.
Well, I tried to be funny in that, if you remember. I was asked to do my Nick Cage impersonation, and I acquiesced. I wasn't really feeling it, but I did it.
It was
you pulled it off.
The Nick Cage impersonation is really good.
Well, there's a video. I do 15 celebrity impersonations in 9 minutes, and you can find that video. It's pretty good.
What's your best one?
Good question. I don't. You know what's weird is that different people will say different ones are the better ones. Like, some people think the Terrence McKenna is good. Some people think the Rand Paul's good. Some people think Nick Cage. Some people think Alex Jones. So depends on the listener, I guess.
Well,
I want to hear the Alex Jones one. Actually, I don't know why.
That one's probably one of the more famous ones. That video, I've done 3 or 4 videos of Alex Jones, and they've had, I don't know, 5,000-10,000 views. So those are pretty good.
Well, if you spontaneously break into one, I'll just go with the flow.
You want to hear my Alex Jones?
Do it, man.
Yeah.
Do it.
All right. I haven't done it in a while, so. Okay. It is Sunday, 2008. We're going to be live for the next 73 hours. I have with me Ron Patton and Olav Phillips today. It is unbelievable. Folks, I have 17 stacks of news here before me.
Hey, you got any cocaine?
Folks, yeah, okay. There are stacks of... It's like Tony Montana down here, folks, okay?
How about some mushrooms?
My face is...
Well, if you want to talk to Terrence McKenna, I can tell you all about mushrooms. I voted for mushrooms for president in 2016.
Wow. That's like a combination of Mr. Rogers and Terrence McKenna, actually.
No shit.
Well, that's how he sounds to me. He sounds like a...
Yeah.
He sounds like if a queer mushroom could talk, it would be the voice of...
I know. Which is weird because his brother Dennis sounds so different,
Oh, really?
Yeah, Dennis McKenna. Yeah, just like... Yeah, it's weird. But hey, Jay, I want to know basically what was the impetus, or if you had an epiphany, to kind of like disseminate some of the topics that you talk about today? I mean, was there a time in your life where you said, "Wow, this is heavy. I want to talk about it. I want to share this with the world"?
Well, I get asked that question a lot, and so a lot of people want to know what the motives are and why are you doing this? Well, one impetus for this, a very strong impetus, is to not have a extremely angry 400-pound bitch screaming at me in a wage slave job. That is a very strong impetus.
Sure.
Hey, at least you're honest, man. At least
I've had that happen.
We all have.
Yeah. If you are in the wage slave position, you probably want out, unless you're like a sadomasochist or something. So, So one motivation is I wanted to be my own boss, and so I just started writing blog posts back in 2005 or 6, I think is when I started blogging, maybe 7, somewhere in there.
Uh-huh.
And then I kind of got this crazy idea from Michael Hoffman had done an analysis of Conspiracy Theory, the movie, and he kind of did a conspiracy analysis of a movie. And I thought, man, that's actually a good idea. So I thought I would try my hand at that because I like movies a lot. So I just started throwing these blog posts up, and I was doing it as a hobby for fun and never really thought much about it. And I was back in, I don't know, 2003, I started listening to Alex Jones, and I was buying Paranoia magazine back then, actually.
Cool.
Old Paranoia, yeah. Still got all those.
When Joan Diarc and Al Hedel owned it.
Yep. I still got all those stacked in my library. So I was getting into, the conspiracy genre. I was reading Jim Marrs and all that kind of stuff, and I was also doing undergrad, and then so I was taking philosophy classes, and I was always interested in comparative religion and theater and Hollywood and all of it, movies. So really what I wanted was just a way to combine all the things that I was interested in and put it all out there and to just sort of be multifaceted, you know what I mean? Because I didn't like the fact that, like, if you do a normal 9-to-5 type job, like that's what you do. That's all you can do. And I found that very, very limiting. So I wanted to come up with a way that I could, if I was in a comedic mood that day, I could do something comedic. If I wanted to spend all the day discussing or writing about philosophy, doing that. You know what I mean? Or geopolitics or whatever. So the message was a way to try to educate people at the same time as making a living and being ridiculous and, all that at once. And so that has been my goal, and that's what I've been trying to do. So if you can find a way to help people and be a positive force and make a living at it, I think that's the happiest that you could be.
Yeah. I mean, I actually understand that because, I'm the executive producer for Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis.
Right.
And I think Clyde actually has basically the same philosophy. He looks at what he's doing as sort of like education, kind of putting out ideas, putting out theories for people to consider. And at the same time, it's a form of entertainment, Yeah. And so it's actually very, sort of dynamic instead of linear. And so I think if you combine those, you're onto something, and you're, attracting more people to, perhaps understand the greater aspects of what's going on in the fucking world, Well,
some people bitch about infotainment, and I think that's ridiculous because, I'm sorry, but if you learn anything about human psychology and how humans operate, that's the only way that anybody's going to listen to you is if you can be.
No, it's true.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
And I know that actually Olaf, he was the executive producer of Ground Zero many years ago. And that's what he really helped Clyde, seeing that kind of vision. And that's what basically got Clyde into becoming nationally syndicated, because he was able to do that. But, and it's in a different format, different way than, let's say, Coast to Coast with George Norrie. He does a great job, but it's just a completely different type of perspective,
Right.
So, yeah, I applaud Jay because, the thing, I've been following you for a few years now, and it's sort of like, wow, this is great. It's so refreshing to see somebody who's so articulate, yet, has a certain amount of humility about himself. And it's kind of like, hey, this is what I want to impart, in terms of like the esoteric shit that's going on in the world, whether it be in politics or in the entertainment industry. And it seems like things are really coming to fruition for you, in terms of a certain amount of success.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't really expect things to go this way, so I'm definitely very thankful to a lot of people who have been very cool all along the way, and definitely, I include you and Clyde in that for having me on. I was always a blast to be on there and to have those conversations.
Right, and we're going to have you on, on other shows, but it's just, it's just very refreshing to have somebody like yourself, on the show, and honestly, Clyde loves you, so
cool.
We look forward to having you back on.
Yeah, well, I think movies can be an excellent medium for, waking people up. I know that's kind of cliche, but I know Olav thinks that too. I remember we had a lot of conversations about kind of bad movies and goofy movies, and
for sure,
the presentation I did at the space program was Hollywood and Bond and that kind of stuff. So predictive programming. So I thought a book would be perfect on that, but I didn't really have any. I didn't really have it together then, and it all just kind of came together, in the last year and a half. So I'm very thankful to Chris, over at Trying, and to Sean Stone and everybody that helped bring it together. So I think it's a great medium for people. A lot of times people aren't interested in geopolitiks or something that might be too bureaucratic, I guess, or you know what I mean.
Well,
but everybody
dry.
Likes movies.
It's
likes
dry.
the movies. So it's dry.
It's dry.
So
it's like watching paint peel. When you try to sit there and explain to somebody the geopolitical situation in Crimea or Ukraine, it's like watching paint dry. I remember when I took international relations, I did a presentation on nuclear proliferation, and when I sat there saying, oh well, there's a lot of bombs, everybody's like, luckily it was before Facebook, but when I had a series of graphics that were designed to demonstrate how many bombs there really are, that I was like, it could rain for like 40 days and 40 nights bombs, and we still wouldn't run out of nuclear weapons. And then suddenly everybody's like, what it can rain nuclear weapons, what you gotta, that notion of infotainment, that notion of making it more palatable. You do an amazing job at it.
Thanks. If you wanted to talk about the Rand Corporation, it'd be very difficult, be very boring. But if you talk about Dr. Strangelove, people will listen, because that's about the Rand Corporation.
For sure. The Rand, and it's like there's a guy named Adam Curtis who makes documentaries for. Yeah, and he did a whole thing on game theory, and game theory by itself. I'm lucky. I work with a guy who's a mathematician, and another guy who's got a very high level of education. I can sit there and actually talk about game theory with them, and it's interesting to me. But it'd be like watching paint dry, right? But if you get out there and like Adam Curtis did with game theory, and he's starting to put movies into it like you do, and and he's talking about fuck you buddy and all this other stuff, the minute you say fuck, everybody's like what, and then they're suddenly interested. So
that's why I put sex in the title of the book.
There you go.
Yeah.
So obviously you watch a lot of movies.
I guess I would say that. Yeah.
So,
I'm sure you've probably seen a lot more obscure stuff than I have.
That may be. I don't think so.
Well, we had a conversation. You were talking about stuff, and I had no idea what you were talking about. So I'm sure you've got me top.
Mr. Anomalous himself, Olaf Phillips.
Well, actually, there's a guy, Phil Learness. He made a movie called The Truth Is Out There, and he's, you know, he makes movies. I mean, he's like a director. You know, he's in the Directors Guild and all that. And I was having a conversation with him about obscure science fiction films, because he does a podcast with Dean Haglund, and they wanted to do like a top 10 obscure movies. And I was like, well, if you want an obscure film, you know, you want the Paul Newman movie that nobody's ever heard of called Quintet. And he's like, Quintet. And he like sat there for 5 minutes going, Quintet, I've heard of that, Quintet. I'm like, you know, it's
that's a dystopian film, right?
Yeah, that's a dystopian film. It's like, and it's a very bizarre film to watch. And he's like, oh my God, I haven't seen that in like 30 years, you know? And it's like the movie everybody forgets that Paul Newman made.
Yeah, exactly, right.
But it's significant. It's a significant film.
Like Zardoz. I feel like Zardoz is significant.
Oh, yeah.
And I talk to people all the time, never heard of it. And they're like, they got the book, and I've got this little chapter on Zardoz, and they're like, I never saw this Sean Connery movie you're talking about where he's dancing around in these underwear. Yeah,
he wears a diaper for like the whole movie.
Yeah, exactly.
He wears a diaper and carries a .38, and he invades a utopian society that's run by a central computer.
Exactly. Yeah. And they're sort of like the gods. It's the Elysian Fields, and it's like an AI smart grid, kind of like a central tabernacle, they call it, that also has the ability to regenerate people.
Yeah, it stores their consciousness in crystals, and then it downloads them into bodies.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it actually has quite a bit of sort of openly Masonic symbology in it. So that's why I included it. I was like, holy crap, there's this guy, like everything conspiratorial and predictive programming in it. And, you know, and plus I felt like it would be neat to have a chapter or a section of the book that was just kind of those 70s goofy, campy, sci-fi dystopias.
Well, I mean,
like Logan's Run.
The flying head. I mean, every time I see that head, it reminds me of the Knights Templar in Baphomet, the Baphomet symbol that supposedly was in the, you know, this old man head, and it's like it's like Baphomet's head flying around through space, like vomiting guns. You know, I'm like, wow, it's vomiting guns. Doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, and there's that weird line about semen and like the gun shooting and the dick shooting sperm, and it's just hilarious stuff in this movie.
And when the computer is like downloading all the information into his head, and he's like wigging out. It's classic. He's like spinning around, and there's like prisms, and he's wearing a diaper, and there's a head floating.
I gotta watch this. I have to watch this.
Naked people, and
you're tripping out, literally.
Yeah, you're tripping out. Yeah. It's Zardoz is quite a film. It's different. Well, the other thing that I found interesting, you know, the Elysian Fields thing is, you know, how they had when everything had gone awry, right? And that original group had built the tabernacle, and they lived in this like manor house, right? But what they had done is they had actually sectioned off the earth and said, okay, well, the violent enforcers will be over here, and then we're going to have like a transparent wall, and then the agrarian people are over here, and occasionally we'll let the violent enforcers in to motivate them to grow more. You know, I mean, they had like sectioned.
So they have like a breakaway civilization. And it's like a total Agenda 21 meets Masonry meets transhumanism future, right?
Yep, it's for sure. And that's not. And then there's Logan's Run. I mean, where to start with that movie? Carousel. I'm 40. Carousel.
Yeah, the 23rd century where pleasure rules in a synthetic society. Excuse me.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought that one was fun too, and it was worth including because it's basically the myth of the allegory of the cave. You know, if you remember the end where they come out of the control grid that basically looks like Epcot Center, and that's funny because if you go to Epcot Center, when it was built, it kind of listed itself as the community of the future. And the whole futurism, cosmism that surrounded the planning of Disney and Epcot was very predictive programming oriented, if you recall. I know that when I was a kid in the early 80s, so when I went, there was a lot of that same imagery there. And then I went again about 5 years ago, and it was updated, obviously, but it was all the same mythology. It was like, in the future, you're going to live in this totally planned community, planned society. Right. It's all going to be run by a central AI grid. You're going to have total panopticon surveillance, and it's like, oh, see how great it is. See how great it is. And then you're watching Logan's Run, and you see this little plastic crappy model of the city, and it looks like Epcot Center, and you're like, holy shit.
Well, and then they went and did it. I mean, they built Celebration, which is basically
Celebration, right?
It's a plan. It's a Disney planned city, and it has all that shit built into it.
Yes, and the Siemens Corporation and the Department of Defense, they're all intimately tied into Epcot. So what you get out of this is that the deep state, the military industrial complex, all of that is literally behind these. What seems to be a fun playland is actually part of, where they want to take things in the future.
Right.
But, they always did that. I mean, you can look at the computer that wore tennis shoes. I mean, say that again. Look at what now? The computer that wore tennis shoes, the old Kurt Russell movie. They've always had that kind of bend. They reprogram his brain to make him a walking human computer. I mean, if that's not transhumanist.
I have not thought about that in a long time.
Well,
that is weird.
It's actually apparently true that the last thing that Walt Disney wrote before he died was Kurt Russell. He wrote Kurt Russell's name on a piece of paper and then went and keeled over.
Yep, boom. Yeah. Well, it's interesting about Walt Disney.
What do you make of that? I don't get it.
Well, Kurt Russell was in a number of films when he was young in the Disney.
Right.
And it was
Disney
almost
movies
and he knew Disney and Kurt Russell, when people have asked him about that, he's like, I have no idea. But Kurt Russell was on Disney's mind as he died. And the prevailing theory is that he had a new movie that he wanted Kurt Russell to be in.
Oh, okay.
But it's still interesting because, I mean, you take a look at the computer that wore tennis shoes. I mean, it's a transhumanist kind of movie. I mean, they turn him into a walking computer. I mean, how much more transhumanist can that be?
Interesting. Okay, yeah, I didn't know that. That's cool.
I'll stay away from the Incredible Mr. Limpet, though.
Well, you remember Daryl, Darryl from the 80s?
For sure.
It's funny because I thought about doing a Daryl analysis, and then I was like, well, I did an analysis of AI, and AI is like Daryl on acid, so.
Yeah, it's true.
Do it, man. Make it happen.
Did you do Escape from New York?
No, actually, that's funny you said that. That is on the list. I'm going down the full John Carpenter canon. So,
okay.
I've not hit Escape from LA or New York, but I did get to Prince of Darkness. The Apocalypse trilogy. So, I lack. In the Mouth of Madness, this is the only one I like there, the last one. And then I did do Big Trouble in Little China.
I better read that one.
That one was fun. I did that a long time ago, so my writing I think is a lot better than it was 5 or 6 years ago. But it's still insightful. I think it's interesting. But
it's an interesting movie from that point of view. I mean, the occultist stuff in Big Trouble in Little China. I mean, it's everywhere.
Yes, the Chinese black magic and the underworld. The hero always goes on the trip to the underworld, which is the theme of the Catabasis in Greek literature. But yet also it also gets into human trafficking, and if you remember, because the Asian girls are being trafficked by Lo Pan.
That's absolutely right. They are.
And it's not accidental that was San Francisco, because that has been a locale for human trafficking in terms of Asian, like triads and that kind of stuff.
Well, and also it taps into the myth that exists of the secret tunnels under San Francisco.
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah. I didn't even think about that.
And even Portland, Oregon here.
I did an analysis of True Detective 1 and 2, both seasons, and that came up in season 2. They referenced the tunnels under LA.
Well, if you want Oregon, you got to do the Goonies.
I did do Goonies. I did. In fact, I did Goonies about 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
Better read that one.
I finally got to it. And I actually noticed some really crazy shit in Goonies that I'd never noticed. I grew up watching that movie a million times, and I thought I've got to get to Goonies. I've been wanting to analyze that for years. So I watched.
Well, Astoria, right? Astoria, is that where it was filmed?
John Jacob Astor, and you get into the whole history of his empire of fur trading, which then turned to drug running.
Right.
And the Astors, John Jacob Astor was a level Mason, and he was part of a famous lodge in New York.
Yeah.
That's all true, by the way. So I actually dug up
one of the so-called Illuminati families.
Yes. I dug up the actual historical documents from the lodge, which are archived online. That's all true. So now how does that relate to Goonies? Well, because the Goonies are the outcasts, right? They're the what they say it several times in the film. I forget how they we're the rejects, we're the outcasts, we're the Goonies, blah blah blah.
They're the other.
And they discover the pirate history of their hometown. So it's more or less like a Masonic mystery code that they decode, like a Nick Cage National Treasure type thing, right? And it's all about the pirates. And, of course, the pirate flag is the flag of Skull and Bones, and it is the Jolly Roger and all that Jordan Maxwell's talked about for years. Everybody knows that. Right. But the point being, two interesting things about the film that I noticed that I'd never seen was that one that they're the heroes because they're the anti-heroes in much the same way as the pirates are portrayed as the heroes, because the founding families of the big oligarchic families, they're above the law. They're the pirates, right? And so, in other words, the Goonies figure out that it's all a scam, right? Like how rulership and oligarchy comes about is through transcending boundaries of law and operating outside of law. Right. And that's why Skull and Bones has the skull and bone imagery, because they run the freaking drugs. It's a secret society that runs drugs. Right. Hello?
Yeah.
Yep. That's where the CIA comes from, all that. We know that. Okay. The other thing I noticed is that Spielberg does this all the time in movies, is that he sets into motion a cause and effect chain reaction sequence that is a Rube Goldberg machine. So if you're not familiar with Rube Goldberg, you'll know it's the kind of goofy machine where you kind of a bowling ball drops and then it knocks a chicken egg into a bowl, which drops, and it's like this really wacky kind of machine. I'm sure if you've ever played the game Mousetrap, right? You're familiar with the Rube Goldberg machine, right? So what Spielberg does, the reason he puts that in his movies, I think, all the time, is that it's the storylines in the films are a series of chain reactions that begin, with sort of the opening sequence or whatever. Now, Goonies has that at the beginning, where when the Fratellis escape the jail, it sets into motion a series of events that sparks the whole adventure, and hence the Goonies discovering the secret of Astoria and all that. And so that's why that's actually referenced several times in the film, right? The booby trap. A booby trap is a Rube Goldberg machine. So that's why you see a Rube Goldberg machine in Back to the Future at the beginning. Doc has one set up in his lab. So this is a thing that obviously occupies some level of fascination in Spielberg or Dick Donner.
Right.
Robert
So it's a
Zemeckis'
reoccurring
mind.
theme in different films.
Yes, and I think it's, well, it could suggest many things, but it suggests, well, say like in Back to the Future, you have this initiation of a sequence of events that it's almost causally determined.
Right.
And the whole point of what Marty wants to do in Back to the Future is escape being causally determined, escape being the result of his parents' weaknesses and failures, to escape the limitations of time, basically. And that is the plot of the whole trilogy, actually, of Back to the Future. Because if you remember in the first one, he wants to correct the failures of George McFly and Lorraine. Right, George has to grow some balls, so that's why Marty goes back and tells him, to punch Biff and so forth. Then in the second one, he goes into the future because and Marty has to learn that Marty has to fix the alternate series of events that he accidentally caused, which led to Biff becoming president, which is very much like a Donald Trump type character.
Interestingly, yeah.
Yeah, because he owns a casino. He's got, they literally reference it like it's Trump. I'm not joking. So,
right. Trump had a casino. Yeah.
Now, if that sounds far-fetched, Gremlins 2 explicitly references Trump. The whole movie is about Clump Industries or something like that. And it's even mainstream news has done stories about how it was a parody of Trump. And, of course, Gremlins 2 has the reference to, 9/11 in several places. So, I don't think it's a stretch here to consider the possibility that a lot of these Spielberg movies, I think, do have pretty substantial references to predictive programming, to Kabbalistic themes, all this kind of stuff. So that's what I've been writing about recently. I've done a couple Back to the Future analyses and Goonies and stuff like that.
So have you ever done High Plains Drifter or any of the Man with No Name trilogy?
Any of the what?
The Man with No Name trilogy, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, High Plains Drifter.
Oh.
Sergio Leone.
No, I haven't. I like Clint Eastwood and spaghetti westerns and all that, but actually I've really just kind of focused on the just a lot of the sci-fi, fantasy, dystopian genres. I haven't really... Kind
of like Philip K. Dick type movies?
Yeah, I branched out into some Hitchcock and Bond and espionage, and some David Lynch, and some of the classics, like Kubrick and stuff like that. But I would definitely eventually like to branch out into other classics, I guess you could say.
Well, yeah, because he's clearly an anti-hero. I think it's High Plains Drifter where they rename the city, they paint the city red, they light it on fire, and it says "Welcome to Hell." So there's some obvious stuff in those.
Well, there's so many that I need to get to. I get embarrassed when people ask because I haven't.
Oh, you shouldn't get embarrassed.
I still haven't done Metropolis. I really need to do that.
I really need Metropolis.
Yeah. What else? Oh, I haven't gotten into any of the Jodorowsky movies. There's a lot of really crazy stuff in those too.
Well, Jodorowsky movies. You can make an entire career just doing Jodorowsky movies. They're insane.
Yeah,
they're just. I watched the documentary about when he was going to make Dune before Lynch took it over, and it's just insane. It's just utterly insane. I don't even know where to begin. Yeah, just watch the documentary. What he was going to do, and what's interesting is that in the documentary itself, he points out that all these things that they had wanted, he had brought all these people together to make the movie, and and all these guys, when they stopped trying to make Dune because it just wasn't going to happen, they went off and made Alien, and they went off and made all these other movies, and you can see the stuff that they actually picked off, cherry picked out of Dune that they did in like Alien. I mean, it's especially the Geiger stuff is really, really clear.
Yeah, didn't Salvador Dali ask for like $1 million a minute?
Yeah,
something ridiculous.
Yeah, he wanted $1 million a minute. So and then and a helicopter, and like Orson Welles needed to have his favorite chef flown in.
Yeah.
My favorite Orson Welles movie. Everybody's like, "Oh, Citizen Kane, Citizen." No.
Hold on, let me guess. F for fake.
F is for fake. Oh God, yes. The part where he's sitting at the table and he's got this bib on, he's got this and his moo-moo, and he's got this huge plate of oysters, and he's just talking, and he motions the guy over. He's like, "Come here, you can take this plate away," and he's like still doing the documentary while he's like eating and handing plates to waiters, and it's just. And then Future Shock's my second favorite. It's
Touch of Evil is great too with that.
Oh yeah,
with that opening single shot.
Well, the thing about Future Shock is just like his delivery. Like he's like, we're all just bombarded with technology. It causes a kind of shock. A future shock, and he's like, "Oh my God, I just thought of something amazing." I mean, but
I like in F for fake how he just shows that model he was dating, Coda, whatever her name. He shows her ass for like
Oya Kodar. Yeah, Oya Kodar. Well, that's the funny thing. When you watch the movie, I forget exactly how long it is. Let's say for the sake of argument, it's 77 minutes, right? And he's standing in a railway terminal in France. It's in Paris. It's the main Paris train terminal, right? And he's like doing magic tricks to these two little kids, and he's like, once upon a time I was a poor guy, and I'm doing tricks, and look, I can make change fall from your head and all this shit. And he says, this movie's about fakes, and it's actually a really good movie, but he says this movie's about fakes and charlatans, and I'm a fake and I'm a charlatan and all this shit.
Yes.
And then he says, I'm going to tell you the absolute truth for 63 minutes. I want to tell you again, I'm going to tell you the absolute truth for 63 minutes.
But I'm also lying.
Right. And then he goes on and on and on. He says, I want to remind you again that I'm going to tell you the absolute truth for 60 minutes. And so then
that's all neuro-linguistic programming. That's all NLP.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And here's the kicker. So he gets to the 61-minute mark, and he tells this story of Oya Kodar, who his muse, girlfriend, whatever, and she was like, what was it? Picasso was like hot for her, and it's and as Jay pointed out, it's literally like 17 minutes of her walking around in about the skimpiest shit that he could get away with, showing her butt and watching people like trip as she walks by and like run into walls and shit like that. And then at the end of this 17 minutes of watching her ass, he goes, that's all bullshit, ha 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 ha, in the movie.
Yeah. Is that, by the way, I don't know, I just was thinking when I was watching it, the thought occurred to me, is this also the first mockumentary? Did this start the trend of the mockumentary?
I think it did. I mean, there's a very, when you watch it, when he's talking about Elmire and what's his name, the Clyde, is it Clyde or Clyde, the guy who wrote the fake diaries of Howard Hughes.
Of Howard Hughes, yeah.
There's a kind of sarcasm to the whole thing that I think is pretty clear. So
yeah, absolutely.
In many, I mean, he definitely mocks you at the end, but at the whole thing, yeah. And I think there's also some mocking when there's a part where he's sitting in a film editing bay, and he's got stacks of like 16 millimeter canisters all over him, right? But they're all blank. There's no words on them. I mean, I own a number of 16 millimeter movies of like, old, In Search of and all, In Search of Ancient Astronaut, all this really old, kind of 60s and 70s UFO documentaries, cryptozoology. I get this big stack of movie canisters right for it, and on all of them there's like Sharpies and drawings and schematics and all kinds of crazy shit. He's sitting in a film bay and it's all stacked around him and it's all blank. I mean, they're different colored ones, but they're all fake. And I think he was a very meticulous guy, and I think that there's a point to that he's
absolutely,
that films are fake, and he's surrounded by fakery, and he's a fake himself. So, for what it's worth.
Well, that's kind of the point in Mulholland Drive too, when when Naomi Watts goes to Club Silencio and there's all this weird performance going on, and the whole point of the performance is no high bando, right? There is no band. And you think this band is playing, but it's actually a tape. And there's people pretending to play.
Right.
And the point being that what you think is the story is not really the story, because the whole point of Mulholland Drive, well, part of the point of Mulholland Drive is that Naomi Watts, thought she was going to go out to Hollywood and from the Midwest, this prairie muffin, and she's going to be the next Greta Garbo or whatever. And she ends up a schizophrenic, multiple personality crack whore. So the story is not what you think it is. Right.
So where is Mulholland Drive located, actually?
Actually, I was just on it this few months ago. Jamie and I went to Hollywood, and we spent, 3 weeks out there visiting and checking out stuff. And when you go into, it's not far from actual quote Hollywood area, but it's it goes up into the Lookout Mountain area. So you drive up this road, Mulholland Drive, and you go all the way up to where Lookout Mountain Studios was that Dave McGowan's written about. And that was the secret Air Force studio where they filmed the atomic bomb footage and all this kind of stuff. And it was... we don't actually know everything that they produced, but it was supposedly thousands of films, and all of the top A-list people at that time back in the 50s had access to it. So Jimmy Stewart, Cary Grant, Walt Disney, Marilyn Monroe, all these people had access to this. They were doing things at this secret Air Force studio, and we don't really know what, but that's all true. The house is now a house. It's Jared Leto's house, of all people. And when you drive up the road, you go up Mulholland Drive, and then you turn onto Wonderland Avenue, and you come all the way up to the very end of the road, and there's this big, ugly, old Bauhaus-looking facility that's converted into a house, and there's still some of the Air Force memorabilia around. So you can actually see old signs that say, property of U.S. Air Force and stuff like that.
Even still?
Does that go up?
That's weird.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I took pictures.
Then it's real. Pictures equal real.
No, I didn't Photoshop them. They're real.
Right.
But I didn't see Jared Leto. I guess he was being the Joker in Suicide Squad. So
Yeah.
So who was the director of the Mulholland Drive movie?
David Lynch.
Okay. And also Stanley Kubrick. I know that Olaf has an interesting fascination with Stanley Kubrick for several reasons. Can you kind of maybe elaborate on Stanley Kubrick in regard to sort of his, whether it's his esoteric knowledge? I mean, he's a real enigma. And there's a lot of spurious theories about Stanley Kubrick regarding 2001 Space Odyssey, maybe also filming the so-called moon hoax Can you maybe elaborate on Stanley?
Well, I get asked that a lot, and
yeah.
Just to be honest, I always say, I mean, I'm not really a Kubrick expert. What I did was I chose, 3 or 4 films from big directors, and I what I do is film analysis. So I'm not,
sure.
And I understand that, understanding Kubrick to some degree is part of the film analysis. So I'm not denying that, but I don't know. I mean, I get asked this all the time, and I don't know what Kubrick's motives were. I mean, I would tend to think he was probably, as an artist, he was sincere.
Right.
He probably wanted to get the truth out. I tend to think that, even though he was probably corralled into that older sort of leftist, just what was considered normative for anybody in Hollywood just to be left. I mean, Spartacus, was considered Marxist propaganda, and in a way it is kind of because it's the slave revolt and all that. But you see these really interesting themes that emerge consistently in Kubrick films, like human trafficking or elite pedophilia. I mean, these are consistent Kubrick themes from Barry Lyndon to Eyes Wide Shut to The Shining. Lolita, right? As well as other, all kinds of other themes too. So I just picked Eyes Wide Shut in 2001 and The Shining because I thought those were pretty seminal standout films, right? And but I differ with Jay Weidner. I mean, I like Jay Weidner's stuff a lot, and we have a lot in common, but. I think that The Shining is a traditional ghost story. I think it's about things like possession, and it's a critique of America. So I'm not discounting the moon theory, but it's just not the focus that I put on it. I think Eyes Wide Shut is about elite sex parties and sex magic. I think that's what it's about.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I've actually been in touch with several MK Ultra survivors, and they really point out to that movie as being really accurate in terms of some of the stuff they've gone through. So I definitely think that he was onto something, again, based upon these very legitimate survivors of MK Ultra who are basically echoing the same sentiments.
Well, the other movie you have to watch if you want that kind of Illuminati parties and how the system works is was it Brotherhood of the Bell?
Yeah, it is good. I've seen that. Yeah, that's kind of that Skull and Bones approach.
Yeah, it's literally how Skull and Bones operates.
Right.
They basically made a movie called The Brotherhood of the Bell.
Yeah, that was kind of updated too. If you saw that 2001 or maybe 1999 Paul Walker film, The Skulls.
I never saw that one.
It's worth watching. I mean, it's very similar to Brotherhood of the Bell.
Yeah,
but
I've heard about that.
Yeah, very much the same themes. It's not a great movie, but it's definitely worth watching. Society is a B movie from the 80s that is the same, has the same themes. Kill List, an independent movie that's more recent, has that theme. What else is there? I don't know. I'm sure you could come up with more that would.
The one.
Starry Eyes. Starry Eyes has that theme. Go ahead.
Well, the Star Chamber too. I mean, it's obviously it's kind of structured in the police. Right, but it's still, a secret society of police guys that sit around and deal out justice.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I argue too that you can kind of derive these same themes in, what I roughly call the Hollywood trilogy of Lynch: Lost Highway, Mulholland Drive, and Inland Empire. All those three have this same kind of idea going of Hollywood, human trafficking, porn industry, elite sex parties, and sex magic and so forth.
Another movie you might check out, Executive Action with Burt Lancaster.
Yeah, people have been telling me that, and I haven't gotten around to it. It
basically lays out the Kennedy assassination.
Okay.
And it literally is like the Kennedy assassination. They don't it's not like Capricorn 1 where, they moved it from the moon to Mars, right? Because originally Capricorn 1 was supposed to be the moon, and then they changed it to be Mars because they thought the moon would be too controversial. But in executive action, it's literally like, we're going to go kill JFK. It's good. I mean, it's Burt Lancaster. I mean, you have to like Burt Lancaster, but it's good.
Well, Parallax View is good too. I've always liked that, and that's kind of that same theme of getting of a private corporate run MK Ultra with the patsy.
The MK Ultra movie you got to watch is Mission Kill. Have you ever seen that one?
Mission Kill.
I think it's Mission Kill.
I thought I'd seen every MK Ultra movie.
Oh, no.
No, I haven't seen that.
I think it's Mission Kill. It's got Leslie Nielsen and who's the guy who was Frank Poole in 2001? Gary Lockwood.
Okay.
And basically, it's an assassination school with mind control people running in Manila. And Leslie Nielsen in this, I want to, if I remember correctly, he falls in love, as much as he can. He kind of falls in love with this girl, and she's a mind control assassin, and they take off, and Gary Lockwood's like hunting them down.
Okay.
Yeah, Mission Kill.
Yeah, you can always count on Ola to throw you a new one.
I know. There's always something. Well,
you two, you two chat. I was thinking confirm the name.
Yeah, I was thinking about Telephone with Charles Bronson.
Oh,
yeah,
Telephone.
Yeah, it's a classic.
Yeah. You can't beat that in terms of like understanding, the hypno warrior assassin that's, triggered by words or a poem or something, That's classic.
It's
one of the
Project Kill, Leslie Nielsen, Nancy Kwan, Gary Lockwood. And basically Leslie Nielsen, Nancy Kwan are like an item, and they try to break free, and they're pursued by Gary Lockwood.
And what was the name of it one more time?
It's called Project Kill.
Project Kill. Okay. Yeah, there's did you see that more recent independent movie Kill List?
I have not yet, but it's on my list.
Yeah, that it's pretty brutal. I'm not as I get older, I kind of shy away from the violence. You know what I mean? But it's pretty brutal. I didn't really care for the violence in that movie, but the message of the movie is it's not symbolic. It's very in your face. So I'll say that. But yeah, it pretty much lays it out. I mean, in terms of British aristocracy and cults and ritual murder and all that.
So this was a recent release?
Yeah, it was 2014 or 15, I think.
Interesting. So, hey, Jay, I wanted to kind of get back to Esoteric Hollywood.
Sure.
And it appears that you go as far back as Alfred Hitchcock. So what are some of the interesting characteristics about Alfred Hitchcock in some of the movies that he put out in terms of whether it's esoteric or propaganda or a combination of both?
Well, I discovered some interesting facts about Hitchcock that I think maybe not everybody knew. For example, he did work closely with British intelligence, and he was in the Quarter Circle. Yeah, and he filmed some war footage actually for the British Ministry of Information. So he wasn't, just this kind of organic director that just rose to through the ranks or whatever. He was very much tied into the power structure, and he himself is a fascinating character. You could do a whole book on him. People have done thousands of books on him.
Sure.
But I just chose a couple that I thought stood out that obviously everybody's, I'm sure, has seen North by Northwest and Vertigo. But there's a lot of themes in North by Northwest and Vertigo that relate to reality. And that's what I do in my book is kind of pick out what's in these films that is real. And I think that's what's the most interesting thing that most people are not aware of is that a lot of this stuff's real. You know what I mean? A lot of what you see, for example, in North by Northwest, the nascent CIA, it's one of the first movies to mention the CIA by name. They have the ability to alter the news. You know, they frame the news story such that but the Cary Grant character is blamed.
Right.
I think that's Project Mockingbird, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, it's the mainstream news now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we live in Mockingbird 2.0.
Yeah.
But there's all kinds of crazy stuff about it. I mean, his stuff was apparently studied by the Tavistock Institute because of the effects upon the audience. You know, people are like screaming, running out of Psycho, right? And so if you study psyops, you're interested in that for a military purpose.
Right. Well, it's also his form of cinematography and the camera angles that he used too. So it was sort of interesting, you know. Besides the actual script, I always found it very intriguing of, you know, how he did things.
In Spellbound, you have Salvador Dali designing the dream sequence, which is, you know, it's really esoteric, sort of all-seeing eye imagery, and that's because there's an influence of German expressionism and Satanism and so forth, and I mean, German expressionism was consciously satanic in its influence. So Hitchcock, I think, draws from a lot of wells, but recurring theme is personalities. That's something that you see consistently in Hitchcock movies. Spellbound. Stranger on a Train, Psycho, right? Vertigo, North by Northwest. They all have this theme of the double. So, Marnie. That's another very important Hitchcock movie that gets forgotten. Marnie has undergone trauma-based mind control, and so she has these triggers that flash her back to, you know, childlike state. Yeah,
I was just thinking of Marnie. That's I mean, it is trauma-based mind control, and half the movie is her being triggered.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I just saw Split, by the way, which is like holy cow! It's like,
oh really?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And that's the whole movie.
Clyde Lewis and I are gonna hopefully see it early next week, and maybe do a show on it.
Yeah. Well, I'm writing analysis presently,
so perhaps we can have you on. You know,
that would be perfect. Yeah, because it ties into my books. Yeah.
Cool. So there you go.
So much to talk about. So many movies.
Yeah, it's never ending. But I tied the North by Northwest chapter I kind of go into Wag the Dog, which I think is an important one, because you've got, the ability to fake a war, right? I mean, and how relevant is that to fake news, right? This whole faux controversy that the establishment has created in the last few months, you know, saying they're going to crack down on websites, and actually that professor Melissa Zimdar, who created this list of the supposed fake news sites, she had 21st Century Wire on there, which I write for. So I was, directly implicated in her list of fake news that went out to all these different mainstream outlets.
Aren't you special? Huh?
Well, I'm not saying it was directed directly at me. I'm just saying that
I know.
I took it personally because I write for 21 Wire. I like Patrick Pennington.
Well, just stay away from veterans. Was it Veterans Today?
I'm not. There's a lot of bogus alternative media out there, but she was making this list for the mainstream news is the thing,
right? So,
point being, just that the irony here is that we're talking about fake news, and then you go watch a movie like Wag the Dog, and it's total revelation of the method they show you how they fake the news, the establishment, that is.
So, did you ever watch Rubicon?
I did. In fact, I really like that series, and you've got this NGO operation that is totally a CIA front. I mean, how more obvious can that be?
Yeah, and and they're taking all the documentation that they produce, and it's going back to, a round table of like 6 guys sitting around a table, and they're manipulating, foreign policy and world events to better themselves.
Exactly. Yeah, that's probably why that only lasted 1 season.
Yeah, I have one of our listeners is after me to do a Rubicon show. So in the next podcast or two, I'm going to do Rubicon with Ron, because like the guy who was the showrunner for Rubicon, his dad was in the CIA, and he had a whole series of fake identities, and it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that one definitely lays it out in terms of the fronts and shells and manipulation of, like you said, foreign policy and the news. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a must watch for any conspiracy nut.
Oh yeah, totally.
Hey, Jay, I have a friend who used to actually write for Paranoia back in the 90s when I used to write for him. His name is Yuri Delbenko. He wrote a book called Hoodwinked, Watching Movies with Eyes Wide Open. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I hadn't.
Actually, it's really interesting because it's basically something similar to what you put out, but it's, older movies. And he kind of gets into like what he refers to as poly sci-fi, political science fiction, Illuminati, mind control, and psyops. So, I mean, I'd recommend that you kind of check that out. And
the book is called Hoodwinked. Yeah, I'll get that.
Yeah, it's called Hoodwinked, Watching Movies with Eyes Wide Open.
Okay.
And I think it came out sometime back in the late 90s. But I was just, all of a sudden, it just like came to mind. It's like, whoa. But I mean, your book is much more thorough, but you might want to check that out because it kind of gets into like, pop idolatry and sort of he doesn't really get into the esoteric stuff as much as he gets into, the psyop aspect of it.
Right. Well, from a lot of the feedback, I think what people are really liking is that my approach was pretty broad spectrum. So I'm bringing in philosophy. We're talking about Frankfurt School. We're talking about Platonism. We're talking about all that kind of stuff, and we're talking about DARPA and transhumanism, and we're talking about sex parties and masonry and all this kind of stuff. And so I really tried to be broad spectrum. And I one good selling point too is that the book was actually supposed to be out in June of last year, but the publisher felt like I brought in so many ideas and names that I actually needed to define and explain who a lot of these people are. So I had to go, and it took me several months, go back and write about 50 or 60 sidebars. So it actually becomes kind of a textbook. So you've got little boxes in the book that explain ideas and who these people are. So it makes it a lot more. So, I mean, the book's 363 pages, but you're actually getting another, 50 pages.
Yeah, but it's so comprehensive because it's like there's also like a reference guide inside of it.
Yeah. So, you're going to get an explanation of what Operation Gladio is, of what the P2 Lodge is, of what Promis technology is, of all these different people and ideas that are brought in.
So, like, what are some of the things that have like come to fruition over the past few months because of your book, Esoteric Hollywood? I know that there's a possible TV series coming out.
Actually, that has been greenlit. We're going to do 13 episodes. We're going to film that in February. So I've been talking to that's Jay Wiedner and I, and we're working with a guy who's a 2-time Emmy winner. He directed a bunch of award-winning shows for the Travel Channel. So he's going to be producing it and directing it. Maybe I'm not sure who's directing, but Jay Weiner and I are co-creators of the show. Mm-hmm. A lot of it will be based on the material that's in the book, roughly. It'll be called Hollywood Decoded, and I think they want to run those episodes in April. So Gaia TV is on quite a few, I think, cable and satellite platforms, as well as Apple TV, and then streaming, kind of like Netflix. So that has come about, which is really exciting. I never would have expected that to happen.
Excellent.
I'll be on Coast to Coast February 23rd, I think. So yeah, a lot of stuff's coming together. It's really exciting. I'll also will be published in an academic journal too, so that surprised me. But
right. Well, it's really good to hear that, a lot of things are, coming your way in terms of acknowledgement and, your ability to get this information out, so it's
thanks, man. Yeah, well, it's like I said, it's thanks to, you guys and Clyde and Joseph Farrell and who else? I can't think of everybody. Patrick Henningsen and 21st Century Wire and
right.
All my buddies. So
cool.
Yeah, it's really awesome that these things are happening for you, and
appreciate that.
Like I always tell people, I'm a huge fan, and I think you do really good analysis, and you're a trip to talk to.
Thanks, dude.
Obviously,
I appreciate that.
This is short form, so it's like, I've been holding myself back, but this is.
Well, I always feel like I learn from you, Olaf. You always like you're always spitting out this shit I've never heard of.
Yeah.
So.
Starships Invasions, man. I've been wanting to tell you that one for like months. I just keep forgetting to tell you. Go check out Starship Invasions. Christopher Lee, Robert Vaughn, lays the whole UFO.
I'm writing this down.
The Draconians come and they abduct this farmer and they have sex with him, and I think it's also called Project Genocide. If you
know what I watched recently that I really, really enjoyed, that I need to do an analysis of, that I think is great now. I didn't like it that much, like when I was growing up watching it. It's Buckaroo Banzai. That is awesome.
Oh God, yes. Buckaroo, it's filled with stuff. Buckaroo,
yeah, dude.
It's filled with it.
I don't even know what the fuck that's about.
Buckaroo Banzai is about a lot of things.
It's basically these reptilians are taking over, and they set up this fascist dictatorship, and it's just bizarre. It's like you've got the hero Peter, what's his name?
Peter Weller, is
he's like he's a neurosurgeon, and he plays saxophone in a band?
No, he's a physicist, a physicist, a neurosurgeon, a samurai, and he plays guitar in a rock band, Buckaroo Banzai, and the Hong Kong Cavaliers.
Wow, multifaceted individual.
And you also have the Jeff Goldblum character.
Yes,
Jeff Goldblum mysteriously shows up in a cowboy outfit.
Yes,
no
Pecos
explanation.
Bill. No, he's not Pecos Bill. He's Rawhide. No, Rawhide's the other guy. I forget now. But, and actually, interesting thing about Buckaroo Banzai, there was a sequel plan called Buckaroo Banzai versus the World Crime Syndicate.
Yes, I've heard that. Right.
Yes, and they never got the traction to actually make the movie. But to this day, Peter Weller says that if they can pull it off, that he'll come back. Even as an old guy, he'll come back and reprise his role as Buckaroo Banzai. Pretty much everybody.
Oh, wow,
in
that would be awesome.
Yeah, pretty much everybody in it is like, no, we'll all come back to do that one. But they did a series of comic books where they played out the World Crime Syndicate thing, and yeah, it's. I mean, the World Crime Syndicate, like when you hear about what it is, it's very like Hawaii Five-0, like low fat. Low fat was the bad guy. He was like a Chinese agent, drug runner, human trafficker in Hawaii Five-0. It's like the way it's described. It's very like Hawaii Five-0. It's a trip, but they never made it.
Well, so many movies, so little time.
Well, we've been at it for quite a while now. I think we need to let let Jay rest his brain so that he can make some more film analysis. It's been wonderful having you on. Please, I hope you'll come back and we can geek out.
Sure, man. Yeah, I love these kind of free-form movie talks. I mean, that's probably the most fun you could have.
Oh yeah, it's the best. But keep at it, man. I mean, great work. We got to get more. We got to get more of your shit into Paranoia. We really do.
Yeah, I mean, feel free to lift anything that you want. Put it in there.
I will liberally. All right. Well, that's been another fascinating hour and 13 minutes and 46 seconds of paranoia bullshit. Again, everybody, thanks for listening. We appreciate your listening to our podcast and making it semi-successful. Buy some T-shirts. Buy some books.
Hey, Olaf, can I add something?
Oh, absolutely. We're freeform. Fuck all that other stuff.
So basically, the way I make a living is if you purchase the book from me, and I do sell signed copies, so and I can ship outside the U.S. So if you go to Jay's Analysis, you'll see the tab there for getting a signed copy of Esoteric Hollywood. So I would encourage you to do that. And I also offer access to lectures, talks, interviews, and the archives at Jay's Analysis, which is growing to be a pretty substantial, bunch of interviews and crazy shit.
And what's that URL again?
It's just jaysanalysis.com.
Repeat it one more time.
jaysanalysis.com, no apostrophe.
And fucking go there and buy his book, man. It's really awesome. You just need it. It's one of those books. You just have to have it, and it'll be signed. I mean, how much better is that?
I'm holding my signed one right now.
Yep, I'll draw you a little My Little Pony, or I'll draw you a little Brony character or something like that.
Yeah, I have like an alien. I think it's a gray on mine.
You know what? Tomorrow I'm gonna go buy another copy, and I want a My Little Pony in mine.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll send you one.
I want the Doctor Who My Little Pony.
Give it up, Olaf.
No, for real. His name is Dr. Hooves. Okay. I'm not joking. And he has an hourglass on his butt. I'm not kidding. For real. And he has a scarf and a hat. I'm not joking.
You're sick. You're sick.
I'm sick? Why am I sick?
Let's wrap this up.
All right, we're going to wrap this show. Anyway, thanks everybody for listening. Sorry, Jay, I left out the URL thing. But thanks for listening. It helps us by you listening and to know you guys are out there. You can find us at paranoiamagazine.com, paranoiapublishing.com. We're on Facebook, Paranoia Magazine, Paranoia Mag on Twitter. Oh, man. You can email us.
Do we have Instagram?
We have Instagram. It's Paranoia Mag, I think. I don't know.
That's Twitter.
Social media is tiring. If you go to the website, there's a happy little link to all that stuff.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Gotcha.
All right. Well, that's it. Hope you enjoyed it. Next week we're gonna make another one. I don't know what it's about yet, but Ron and I will. Oh, you do?
I do.
What's it about, Ron?
Oh, Ilana Freeland will be on.
Oh, the chemtrail book.
Yeah. Chemtrails, HAARP, and the full spectrum dominance of planet Earth. But she's going to talk about her upcoming book about the space fence.
The space fence, the DSP space fence.
There you go.
The one that sets off all the time and they fire shit from orbit.
Yep.
STS 49? STS 49.
I don't know. She'll talk about it.
She'll talk about it. And I'll try to remember because I have a shitty memory.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So everybody, be excellent to each other. Ron?
Take good care and keep the faith.
All right. Keep it real, everybody. We'll see you soon.